Hello, at this point I guess let me start by thanking MCTMD1. You keep asking questions in a timing such that I feel like I have a hold of the answer and its clarity that I want it to have. Of course there could be more clarity, but there could also be less. And so this is more compared to the less I sometimes witness it to be. So this time the question was in the video, let me scroll up and see, to a Lord immolation on pure reason, 3 of 3, and hopefully I get to the right comment again. And the second part, the second paragraph in this comment, I say if the planet did not exist fully before you, then we couldn't be here, and I think you were saying that a large number of possible universes were swimming in quantum limbo until a consciousness collapsed them. Is that accurate? So I made like a 4 or 5 comment reply. And that's what I'm just going to put that in video form. So yes, but a couple things. One, I don't consider it as a collapse, and I think it's interaction with other entities. Okay, so when you interact with another particle, whether that's in a particle that's in a conscious system or not. I mean, consciousness is a property of systems, so I don't know which are necessarily conscious, but I know they exist, and then there's this collapse. But I don't think of it as a collapse. So I guess I'll just try to read this since it was long enough, and hope that it got my idea as clear as felt like it got. I guess I haven't read this yet, so maybe it won't make as much sense as I hope. But in that case, good, because I want to go over. I want it to make sense. It's a clear idea in my mind. So I said yes, but I don't think of it as a collapse. I like the many histories interpretation. I think it's demonstrated that just as there is a path from the event we witness showing a determined history, that is, we test the spin of an electron, find it's up, and know it has been up since the spin was given. But we also know from superposition about the other path, where it has the other determined but contradictory history. Even if that version gets destroyed / collapsed, seems to me to have materially existed for some time. You see this in the two-slit experiment. But what existed in it, the upspin of a particular electron, did not exist in ours, the downspin in the same electron. So that's how I see existence depending on the interaction, because in terms of collapse, we posit that to ensure that we live in the real world, that ours is what really happened, which to me is not relativistic in the broadest sense, meaning not general relativity, but just the principle of relativity as it's occurred throughout the history of philosophy, and especially skepticism. It doesn't seem relativistic. It's like saying that we're in the center of the universe, in the galaxy, in the center of the solar system. We want to be in the center. It's us-centric. We must be the ones, and I capitalize T and O. We must be the ones that made it into reality. Now why? Why us? The one reason we might think that is because here we are, so obviously we made it. But the weakness of our assumption that it was us is the assumption that only we made it. Certainly we made it, but perhaps the other did as well. Now, I do believe universes reconverge, okay, and you can look at quantum erasure for interesting experimental hints as to what that might mean. But I also think they can separate, and I think they can separate and continue to separate and diverge. So there are likely whole universes with everything from alternate configurations of the same particles that we have to universes with different physical constants, where the very energy that makes up our particles is coalesced into other particles, or even the laws of physics exist differently in that universe, and exist in that universe, but don't exist for us. Now, if you notice, I said that those dimensions exist for us in some sense. And when they are nearby universes, such in the two-slit experiment, we see the evidence of these two, quote-unquote universes, that they're interacting. So we actually do still interact between them, meaning they're also part of the same, universe in some sense. So I'm trying to sort out the term universe. And perhaps with the far, far distant universes, dimensionally distant, I don't mean far away, but dimensionally, ones where the laws of physics are even different than our universe. Perhaps there is a relationship between us and them, tenuous, but existent relationships. So we are connected, and we could exploit that. Even if it's not a very strong connection, if there's any connection at all, maybe we could use it to communicate with that universe in some sense. And since there is a connection, those universes do end up existing in my definition of existence, because they can interact with us. So then what you say and I say is very similar, right? Then suddenly there's this externality, and that's the version of the externality I believe. And it can be pretty comprehensive, because maybe everything's interacting with everything else in some sense over all time, going back to all the Big Bangs. I certainly don't know that's not the case. Well, then, this universe we're talking about on its own is the total of these. And the problem comes that with universe, there's two ideas in there. One is a union, but the other is unitary, that it's a one thing. And the problem is that the universe, even taken together as a collection of the one thing, is kind of like a fractal. You know, you can abstractly call it one thing by just saying all the things connected, but you have to deal with the fact that there's contradictory physical statements, and that's not what was supposed to be meant by a long tradition of the word universe. You know, what was going on in the universe was the electron spin was either up or down, not both. So to make room for these contradictory physical facts, you need this a new dimension, and we call that a dimension of what we used to call universes, that there's multiple ones. And that's why we get the idea that really it might be better to call it a multiverse, to point out that you can never deal with it in a unitary way. It has to be multivariate. You will always deal with the universal questions with multiple variables and with infinite detail in each sub-universe and infinite number of super-universes. So, you know, and even though they're infinite in number, there could be a finite volume of them. So an infinite number could still have a finite volume, if you understand me, a finite volume of possibilities. For example, there might be no universes where physical laws in that universe contradict, right? I would think there probably wouldn't be that kind of universe, where even in that universe there's a contradiction. In that case, it's kind of weird using the word universe, but I just think it makes more sense. I think what we think of as a universe is really just one of the subsets of the things, basically, that can physically, reliably interact with us. And then these other universes don't, in principle, interact with us, but there is some little exception to that rule. And so, yes, we're in one major combined thing with them that we could call the multiverse, and think of universes in this other way. And then applying this to what we're talking about, when my universe, is everything specifically that interacts with me. And when we're talking about universes, that's what we talk about. What's true for me is whatever is consistent with my experiences. You tell me about your experiences and your conclusion, and if you take it and say the same kind of thing, well, we get an intersubjective reality. But we do that by, I judge truth, he judges truth, and the fact that they're the same. You know, we might carry that and get a whole big group of people that believe in that truth. Again, it's still built up on subjectivity, though you can, once you have granted that there's more than one subject, you can point out that, well, it's not just like subjectivity because it's from a different perspective, and you get an opinion that takes multiple perspectives into account.